What's up everyone, John from ARTV. It's time for a review of the second full-length studio album by Halsey. It's called Hopeless Fountain Kingdom. Now, if you have not seen my review of Badlands yet, definitely check that out. It's linked in the description down below. It's not just me covering this today. In fact, for a while, I've been teasing the fact that I'm reviewing this with Mark of Spectrum Pulse. If you have not checked out his channel yet, please do so. It's linked in the description, and we have been friends for years, reviewing stuff together, occasionally for years, and we actually had a really great conversation here. So make sure you check out his channel and his Twitter. I'll put those down below, and other than that, let's just get right into it. Alright, I am here with Mark from Spectrum Pulse to talk about this Halsey record. This is something that has been in the works. Mark actually approached me and was like, hey, I didn't actually cover her last record. I know you did. Do you want to cover this together? And of course I said, hell yes. What's up, Mark?
How you going, John? How are things doing?
Oh, good, good. Are you ready to talk about this Halsey record?
No.
Or no? I have a feeling people are going to be surprised at my take on this, but I think first we need to get a few things out of the way. So this is being billed as a concept record, a story album, Hopeless Fountain Kingdom, something that she's kind of been teasing apparently for years now. What do you think of the kind of Romeo and Juliet-esque aesthetic that she's going for on this record?
Oh, that's a loaded question, because that entirely revolves around whether or not you think this concept works at all. And I think we can get into that a little bit more deeply. What initially caught me a little bit by surprise, and maybe you could provide a little more insight into this, is that apparently this record's supposed to have some tie-in elements to Badlands. Like, I didn't review Badlands. I had other things to do, better things to do. But like I know you had songs that from that record that landed on both your worst list and your best list that year.
It was polarizing, man. It really was, because Roman Holiday is a song that I will still come back to this day. I think Castle and Gasoline are okay as well. I went back and revisited the record before this, and I stand by my rating. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I think people have gotten this idea that I just obliterate and just do not tolerate any Halsey music whatsoever. More so with me, it's a problem with her overarching image that she really tries to reach for, and this kind of faux deep Tumblr pop-esque edgy teen content that I feel like she tries to push. And it's not always that the music is so bad, it's the fact that I don't like a lot of the image that goes along with it, and I can hear that in some of the songs. And as far as the tie-in from Badlands, what I'm seeing, and I guess by seeing I've read up because I didn't hear it in the music, I think what a lot of people are assuming is the fact that Badlands was kind of this futuresque place, and this is like the prequel, the setup to that. And really, whenever I'm listening through this album, I'm not getting so much of a setup as I am a pop record that is, yes, relationship centric. I guess they're kind of connected, but I feel like it's more of like Easter eggs being dropped throughout rather than just a cohesive project. Maybe like little Easter eggs basically saying that, oh, if you followed her on Tumblr or you followed her tweets or etc., you maybe saw that something got mentioned that was mentioned way back in the day.
And you know what, I can see some of that, because the one thing that the whole promotional rollout for this record, between the creation of these two, I think, separate Twitter accounts to represent the two star-crossed lovers that they have on this whole thing, and I'm sitting through this, I'm trying to say, and I keep going back to the fact that if you have to have extra materials to explain the plot of your album, then you've kind of failed to produce a self-contained story here.
Oh, yeah. It's, it starts off on the prologue track. It's literally Halsey quoting the prologue to Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, yeah.
It's just her, it's her reading that. And so I went over on Cliff's Notes and did a little bit of reading on Romeo and Juliet just to see what kind of
I got my copy of the complete works of Shakespeare right here.
Well, do you think, let me ask you this, do you think Halsey spent time reading that before and researching before she wrote the album?
Okay, I'll give her the slightest element of points, because there are elements where you can tell that she's cribbing between the lines of some of the poetry. The whole idea of the ever-changing moon. A lot of the main elements behind Shakespeare swear not to the stars. That these star-crossed lovers are looking for they're swearing to the gods themselves in order that their love may preserve and may last forever. That does not remotely tie into anything she's saying on this entire record.
See, I had a feeling that's where you were going with this, and honestly, that is going to... I'm getting my biggest complaints out of the way first, is the fact that after reading through... No, I did not go through Shakespeare's novels or anything like that. I did not read the entire play or go see an interpretation of the play Romeo and Juliet, but after refreshing myself on it and then listening through this album, I have to say that it's loose at best, the connections that could be made between that. But what my main question to you is, what do you think that she did with the sound on some of these, that where she was trying to, I think, kind of push the pompousness of the early elements of Romeo and Juliet, like on the track Alone, which is supposed to be, I guess, kind of like a party or a ball, like you would see in Romeo and Juliet?
If she's trying to go for that, it's the very Californicated version of Romeo and Juliet that you see on like Baz Luhrmann's Romeo plus Juliet with Leonardo DiCaprio back in the 90s. It has that very much, she's trying to induce a certain atmosphere and air. You get that on one of the interludes, I think Walls Can Talk, with all of the harpsichord and some of like the more elegant sections, even though that song really is just a basic cribbing from what Britney Spears was doing in the mid-2000s, and it really does not sound good with some of that vocal production.
Ooh, this is gonna be our biggest disagreement here, I feel like, because honestly, I was begging for that song to be longer. Yes, I of course instantly heard like some of the early Britney Spears type stuff in the production and that sort of thing. Not that I've spent a ton of time listening to her, but it's one of those things where I cannot help but love the song because it's right up my alley in terms of what I would want from her and her voice. And there's kind of an inflection of this electronic swell as it continues, but I love the kind of manic and frantic start to the track. It's got the strings, like you already mentioned, and it's got almost an orchestral feel driven by her vocals. Mark, I love this song.
Well, here's the thing. Like, it's coming from the producer Lido, who apparently is one of the main focuses of a bunch of the romantic back and forth that's on this record.
Right, one of her exes.
You know what? I will agree with you that there are elements in the production that are mostly tolerable. The vocal production, though, feels so clipped to me, and when you get down to the lyrics, this is a bourgeois fight in a limousine. She goes and gets a little place with her current roommate, till not that this guy lets her in, and then the guy picks the lock and goes in and fucks her. There's an element of creepiness to this that I don't think is brought in any of the context, because it's all framed to look so freaking romantic. It's trying to call to mind that whole Romeo and Juliet grand romance aesthetic, but it doesn't work. It doesn't fit with the way of the songs that she's putting together here. The writing and the whole framing feels so disingenuous to me.
But wasn't Romeo and Juliet just a bit creepy to a lot of people? Especially, I get that their ages were somewhat close, but still they were very young lovers at the same time. And I always got kind of a feeling of, like, especially as I got older, like, isn't this a bit strange, the fact that this seems to be like the ideal relationship to so many people? The fact that they loved each other so much that they would be willing to take their lives for each other? It's one of the, I don't know.
Yo, you're absolutely right there. And there is an element of melodrama that Shakespeare always was very canny to paint it as romantic, but also that these are two stupid kids who are clearly wallowing it. But the thing is that Halsey doesn't seem to have that level of self-awareness when it comes to a lot of her writing, especially when it comes to the persona that she's trying to present. The whole element that she's bad at love, that she is trying to be this character, that she's trying to be this femme fatale character, drawing upon a lot of, let's say, Rihanna, for instance, because you just look at the Needed Me ripoff that is Now or Never.
Oh god, yeah, easily one of the worst songs on this project, that it's only become more insufferable as I have listened through this thing. Honestly, if I'm having to pinpoint big problems on the album, it lies within tracks like the singles that she'd been releasing, that, the Weeknd-esque Eyes Closed, which apparently he helped write the melody for, and it really shows. It sounds a lot like his earlier work to me, but it's not exactly a good interpretation. It's one of those things where I'm listening to the chorus of the song and wishing that I could just listen to Early Weekend instead.
Exactly. He doesn't like, and even The Weeknd at his best, when you go back to the songs on Trilogy I like, there is tightness to it, and there's no tightness really across most of this album. A lot of it feels, and I'm going to say this the same thing what I would say about Badlands for the few times I've heard it, it's so sterile. There's just no color to this instrumentation. If she wanted to go for this sort of lush production, I would, like, the Lido, a lot of his work, I think is actually decent. And you know what? I don't like Lie as a song because I don't think Quavo works on it. I don't think that it's...
No,
like, I don't think
he's not.
I don't think that Halsey's flow is good on that. The production on that song is great. On the hook there, it's good.
I agree.
Even though I can't buy into it, like, there is elements of that grand orchestral production that I think could work. But on the other hand, she's spending most of this album working with Benny Blanco and Cashmere Cat, and when you get the final song, Hopeless, where she's trying to do a Kanye-esque vocal warble for a hook.
It's like Kanye meets Imogen Heap. That's exactly what I put in my notes. Yep.
At least Imogen Heap had the brains to write better songs than a lot of these, and I'm going to get into the lyrics here, because this has always been my issue with Halsey, is that she doesn't have the level of self-awareness to back up a lot of these songs. She's trying to paint herself as some person who is bad at love, who loves them and leaves them, who's trying, and yet there's no self-awareness, there's no arc to her character. Like, that's one of the things I find so frustrating, because Romeo and Juliet, say what you will about those two characters, there was some realization of the consequences of their acts, even if it did feel that ultimately didn't go all that well. For them in the end, they both ended up dead for some sake. But for Halsey, not only do I not get any sense of stakes, not only do I get the sense that there is any sort of that heightened melodrama, but she's clearly all framing this as going to be that it's this dramatic story. I'm like, no, Sorry is one of those cases, that song, it's a piano ballad, I understand it, but it pissed me off so much.
Okay, now let's get into that, because that is honestly one of my favorite songs here. And I think for a second, before I go any further, I want to pause, give some framing on exactly why I looked at, I guess, some of these songs differently, because I went into it the first few listens, and I had it just kind of down that I was just kind of into it being like a concept record, looking at it that way and wanting something of a connecting story throughout. But I guess my third or fourth listen of the album, I broke it up into like multiple listens, and I started, I guess, looking at them as songs on their own. And while a concept record shouldn't have to be listened to like that, a song for a song, like a collection of singles perhaps, songs that are possibly loosely connected, I think I really started to enjoy it a lot more, because some of these songs, like the one you just mentioned, Sorry, it kind of corrected some of the problems that I had with the first album, and that was just the flatness. Badlands must have been a desert, because that record was flat as hell all throughout. But this one, I actually felt like I got more of a personality, and maybe it's a little bit faux, a little bit misleading in places. Still, I think she, as a vocalist on tracks like Sorry, really started to shine on moments like that. And even like we talked about just a minute ago on Lie with Quavo, I was liking what was going on with the chiming keys on that, and just the towering vocals right before it just gets killed, I feel like, the whole entire flow of the track by Quavo. But still, throughout this record, I feel like she held her own, even though not for a second do I believe this personality that she's pushing. Like on Devil and Me, do I really feel like she's got this dark devil side that is just, we don't know what she's going to do next? No, I'm not buying Devil and Me for a second, but as a pop song, I feel like it works. I like the trap style production on it, and even though there's a few problems I have with it, like the bridge of the track, I think she kind of held her own on this record.
See, here's the thing. I don't have the experience coming with Badlands that you do. So in terms of vocal evolution, I'm not really sure I could speak to it. But I can speak to larger pop context. And when I hear her, and I basically put her up against, say, Alessia Cara, who brings in a little bit more fervor and spark. Same thing with Zara Larsson. Or you take someone like Tove Lo, who actually has some of that intense sexuality that can actually balance it out. Or go to Lorde, who just has so much towering charisma and intensity where she can back it up. I look at Halsey and I'm like, you're not on Dea's level, because most pop singers aren't, but at the same time, I don't get that sense of intensity in a lot of these songs. I don't get that sense of greater charisma and gravitas that you need to pull this off. And when you go into songs like Sorry, and you have such egregious issues in the writing, Whereas you're basically talking about this unknown lover. You're sorry that you're having to leave them behind. You're just going to love them and leave them. And it's a repeated arc across most of this project. But then you're saying you remember very personal details about them in the first verse before you go into that. I'm like, how is this not basically a version where you're still trying to frame it as, oh, I am this woe is me tragic figure, but the reality I'm getting, this is very much like Rihanna's Unfaithful. Another song I can't stand. Because it's trying to justify it.
Right. That makes me wonder, what do you think of the track Strangers, which comes later, which basically seems like, she's apologizing to unknown lovers and places, and it's not very cohesive with the number of lovers, or exactly who it is in question, but the track Strangers, which features Lauren from Fifth Harmony, which you have more experience covering than I do. I've never actually listened to a full Fifth Harmony record, but what do you think about her as a vocalist, and this just being a song where it seems like two lovers singing to each other?
Favorite song on the album.
Nice. Yes, I definitely really enjoy this one.
Yeah, I agree with this because there is a groove to the song. There's some actual kick to it. I like the fact that it's clearly no strings attached. They're just fucking because they can. And that they're playing very much in a pseudo confrontational vibe. You can tell they kind of really hate each other, but there actually is something of a connection there. I think they have decent vocal chemistry. I think the harmonies are decent, not great, but decent. I think that Lauren actually showcases some decent vocals there. She's not my favorite of Fifth Harmony. That's still Normani, but I think there is quality to that song. But that also ties back to an issue. I wish this record would embrace more of its pop side. This is a record that is trying for greatness, is trying for all that grand style, but at the same time, I'm like, there is not halfway bad grooves in some of this stuff. If this record and Halsey as a performer was willing to embrace pop music more as a whole and not try to put on airs, I think she could write halfway catchy songs instead of just imbibing the same character that she played back when she was on Closer with the Chainsmokers.
Yes, definitely, most definitely. And honestly, listening to a couple of interviews that she did for this record, she talked about how she kind of had that side in her that could push the radio hits if she wanted to, push the poppier side if she wanted to. I see that on Strangers, but on the two previous singles like Eyes Closed and Now or Never, I don't get that feel necessarily. I don't get the feeling of just committing fully to just a pop song. I still feel like she's trying to hold out for that alternative pop label that she really so desperately seeks and for some reason seems to need.
And I don't get why she even tries for that, because let's be blunt. If we're comparing this to indie pop artists right now, or Baroque pop artists like right now, she's not on St. Vincent's level. She's not against PJ Harvey, Imogen Heap, or any number of indie pop acts that I can name in her space that are far more challenging and weird. Because that's the other thing with the tones of this record. It's not challenging. In comparison, I think Lana Del Rey or Julia Holter are doing more interesting things with this sort of lush sound than Halsey is, and there's not the gravitas or maturity to back it up. I still don't think she understands her own strengths, and there's no shame in being a pop artist. Lady Gaga, as Anthony Fantano made the comments, Lady Gaga revolutionized pop at the end of the 2000s. I think there would have been some strength to that if she had continued in that lane. And I don't know why she doesn't. I'm not sure why either. It feels like if she did continue in that vein, it wouldn't be so much that she would win over the critics or necessarily win over a certain type of fan, but it seems like as somebody in the lane that she's in, supposedly an alternative vein, she would want to, I guess, evolve as an artist and grow in that way, but I'm not seeing that, like you said, so far from her. There's two other songs I want to talk to about real quick. I want to go over Alone and 100 Letters. Two of the songs near the beginning of this record. Sorry. And first of all, let's talk about Alone. Alone isn't bad. I like the sort of the style, the retro soul thing they're trying to do with the instrumental. Again, my issue is consistently with Halsey as a performer and a lot of these lyrics where she's trying to say that, you're going to try and slip inside my armor. She's trying to paint a lot of these guys in these songs as the constant nice guy figure who's trying to put her on pedestals and when don't really truly understand her. And she's trying to be she's trying to find some vestige of comfort and living wild and living hard. Am I the only one who finds this completely unconvincing?
Yeah,
I don't buy it.
It's a rougher track for me too, and honestly, I don't really care for the vocal performance on this one either. It's so curvy, the way I think that's the best way I can describe it, because it takes these kind of dramatic shifts with her vocal tone on this thing, and I really don't care for some of the lines that she dropped. I think the musicality of the song is okay, it's definitely passable. It's the ball, the party, everything like that, whatever it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be containing in this universe, but I don't know how much I see that. But the line on here I guess it's kind of a two-part line because she evolves it from verse 1 to verse 2, but the second time it comes around, it's wherever she goes, a million people trying to hit it. It doesn't sit well, especially on this song, especially as she's trying to create this image for herself and that sort of thing. I don't know if the braggadocious look is necessarily looking good on her.
Well, the thing is I remember when Alessia Cara was using similar vocal cadences and styles back on what the hell was the name of that song? It was the big breakout hit.
Oh, the one where she's at the party, but she doesn't want to be at the party. Here, yes.
Yeah. Whereas she was using it to be quasi-ironic, and Halsey's playing it straight.
Oh, I know. I am completely aware. I know exactly what you're talking about now because it kind of had that vocal fluctuation along with those keys in the background. But for Halsey here, like you said, playing it without really enough defining character to give it that kind of wink or that nod to the audience.
There's not a shred of irony on this album. It's played very earnestly, and it's played completely humorlessly. And I'm going to go back to Shakespeare here. If you've read Romeo and Juliet, that's not what that play was. There was wit, there was character. You're not seeing a Mercutio analog or a Benvolio or Tybalt analogs in these plays where there was some lyric bouncing back and forth. What she does is she strips it down to cater to a very specific, very self-contained, insular narrative. And where I feel a lot of this album is recycling stories she tells over and over again, and I have to be honest, a lot of it just runs together. Every listen I've given this album, the less I remember it.
That is not a good thing. For me, the tracks that stand out to me really do jump off the page, but the ones that just weigh it down and are just sounding bad, they sound bad to me, which is, it puts me in a weird place in terms of how to compare this and I guess score this up against Badlands, because I pressured myself at one point. I was like, am I going to score this higher? How do I exactly relay my full opinion on it? Because I'm more torn on this project than I was Badlands, whereas that one was a couple of standouts, but for the most part, it was kind of just a flat line across. For me, this hits peaks and then drops off. It's like a roller coaster ride or a stock market that is constantly going up and then crashing, because that's really the only way that I can explain my feelings on the record. But before we get to the final ratings, there is one last song that I want to talk about. It's one that I like, and it's called 100 Letters. I am really liking about this song. It's kind of got this snappy percussion that opens it up, and there's some actual guitars in the mix on this one as well, which in the context of the record, they feel a bit like an odd man out, considering there's a lot of synthy stuff, a lot of more, I guess, orchestral type moments that try to serve as transitions in the album and that sort of thing, and I'm not sure how well those always work. But here, I found this to be an innocent enough song, not offensive enough for me to not like it, even though I do have some problems with some of the lyrics on it. I feel like it's one of the better songs on the album.
Again, the writing is what kills it for me. The production is fine. I find a lot of the guitar pickups on this album really weedy. There's not a lot of weight and color to any of the tone. But then I'd say that across most of this record. I think the song is fine. Again, it's recycling a lot of the same narrative of there being some guy who was trying to put her on a pedestal, and now she's going out and sleeping around trying to get over him. But one thing that bothered me about that song was the use of pronouns. You can't follow, like, whether or not there's a third guy in this picture that she was also involved with at some point that she calls out as you, or whether or not that's talking to that same original guy. I found the song tricky to follow, and I'm not sure if that was kind of the point to emphasize how she's just recycling through guys over and over again.
Right. And kind of different lovers and that sort of thing, whether it be the hey, boy, girl, she, he, throughout. It gets a bit confusing to follow, like you said, because initially, whenever I heard about this, and kind of even before the album came out, I thought that it was originally supposed to be about a singular person. This guy, I believe his name was Zach, and he was the founder of the Hopeless Fountain Kingdom. It was a Tumblr page and an Instagram account and everything like that. I thought it was going to be about a singular person, so listening through this record at first was quite confusing.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, to circle back to Hopeless, if that was the title track that ends out the album, I think there was supposed to be some narrative about maybe coming to grips with the fact that you are a serial dater, you are someone who is going through guys and girls and just accepting that about yourself, that you're just hopeless at love.
Right.
But I think it could have been way better communicated. It doesn't fit with Romeo and Juliet at all.
No.
And you know what? Like, if I wish that Halsey had the commitment to actually go all out and make this grand and over the top, or like, hell, if she wanted to go in the Taylor Swift mold of having that level of charisma, because Taylor Swift on Blank Space made it very clear she's also a serial dater, does a lot of the similar things. Problem is, Taylor Swift is a much more compelling performer, a lot stronger of a vocal presence.
Oh, I agree with that. But on the track where she says bad at love, you know, where she's just basically shrugging her shoulders, I guess, and saying, this is me, nothing's going to fix that. I guess I can maybe respect that, because if you know that about yourself, but at the same time, it seems like she's trying to sell other angles at different points in the album, so it leaves me a bit confused on how to interpret it. If I could sum up really the whole record, for me, it's, I would say, kind of like dark, faux, edgy, Tumblr-esque pop that tries too hard, but at the same time is still able to be enjoyable for me, at least in places.
I'm going to give a little bit of a sneak preview to one of my reviews coming up, and that's going to be for Bleachers Gone Now. Because I think there's a major parallel here, and it comes in this. I think that both artists are trying so damn hard to make such big, powerful, important statements about what these mean to them, but have no true self-awareness surrounding their ability to pull this off. And it translates in the writing, it translates a lot in the performance, to some extent some of the production, but hey, at this point we'll see where it's going to turn out. How would you rate this?
For me, I'm going to go with a 3 once again. That's what like I said, it was very difficult for me because that is what I rated Badlands, but for me, it's the roller coaster effect where the peaks are stronger, but some of the lows are lower. So I think some of them were worse in terms of the production and that sort of thing than Badlands, whereas it was kind of innocuous across the board, kind of similar stuff going on. Here, some of the worst songs are even worse. Nothing worse than New Americana, granted, but still. So 3 out of 5 for me.
I can't be as high on this. I'm giving it a 2 out of 5. I don't think it's terrible. I think there are production elements that aren't bad. I liked that Good Mourning interlude. I wish more of the record had a little bit more color and flair. I didn't see enough of that. I wished Halsey told different stories, because Bad at Love does show that she at least has the desire to tell slightly more interesting stories with different characters. I wish she made a self-contained project where you didn't have to go to X-Twitter or Tumblr accounts. But I honestly don't see her fan base really excuse. I see her fan base giving her a pass for all of this.
Oh, completely. Because she, whether they or she wants to admit it, I think that she is making music for a very, very specific audience, and I felt that from the start, and I feel it even more now. So
yeah, I'm not in that audience.
I'm honestly not either. I've already saved, I think it was 3 or 4 songs to Spotify, and that is probably going to be the extent of my relationship with this record. Guys, thanks so much for watching our discussion and review of Halsey's hopeless Fountain Kingdom today. Be sure to check out Mark. His channel is called Spectrum Pulse. He does album reviews. He has a weekly series called Billboard Breakdown, where he breaks down the Billboard Hot 100. And anything else that you want to tell him before you go, Mark?
Well, if you guys have any comments, please make sure to leave them below. You want to support both me and John on Patreon. John's putting out some stellar work right now. My Patreon's a little bit more experimental, where you guys get to vote on the craziness coming up on my schedule and see how that all turns out. It's been going pretty well thus far. I've been pretty happy with all of it. I've been really grateful to all of your support. Hope you guys come out and check out my channel. I think you'll find a lot of interesting opinions, let's just say that.